else can happen.
Now you see, I'm smarter than your average Brewmaster Prot Paladin boo-boo. Yeah. The fastest way I know to get a thread basket.
Paladin, the thread is gone.
It figures. No, but seriously, Guardian Druid is one hell of a fun tank with lots of soak damage capabilities, decent damage, great legendaries to work with, and boy will you learn all about them today. Together with talent, gear, covenants, soulbinds, rotation, and more. More? Yeah, more. Quickly, before we go into talents, please note that this guide is intended for beginner bears out there or returning ones. And because of that, we will always take the more defensive/safe route. There are multiple talent builds for Guardian once you get accustomed to it, and I strongly recommend checking out the Dream Growth Discord or Pump's Wowhead guide for the more in-depth info once you got used to the spec and want to take it a step further. That being said, Brambles will be your first choice for raids and even some dungeons where you know you will take in more physical damage, like Mists of Tyrannusite. This will absorb and reflect back auto attacks, and while Barkskin is up, you will also deal nature damage to mobs around you every second, making Brambles the best choice for this role for DPS. Blood Frenzy is the all-around safe pick for all content and more prevalent in Mythic Plus because it will cause your thrash damage ticks to generate 2 rage, and that, my friend, is something you need to maintain your Iron Fur in crucial moments. We'll get to what all this means shortly. Second row is more situational and it really boils down to your preference. Wild Charge is always the default pick here as it will enhance your mobility, acting as a charge to your enemy, immobilizing them for 4 seconds. If you're just starting out and have trouble staying alive, then a very safe pick would be Renewal. This is a super strong heal on a 1.5 minute cooldown, which upon pressing, it will heal you for 30% of your max HP. Pretty good oh shit button. Next row is all about affinities, and this is strongly linked to things like cat weaving or owl weaving, but again, since this is intended for you thinking of trying bear for the first time, we shall recommend restoration affinity for the time being, just to be safe. Why? Because it provides passive healing, 3% of your total HP every 5 seconds. It gives you access to Rejuve, Swiftman, and Wild Growth, just in case you need them for some extra heals, but it also gives you Ursal's Vortex, which is pretty useful for kiting, especially during necrotic weeks. If you feel a bit more comfy, then Balance Affinity is your go-to not only because of the increased range to your abilities, but also due to a great synergy with your Nightfade Covenant ability and the main talent pick from the next row. Speaking of which, here all 3 options are viable given the right context. Mighty Bash can be a good pick in Mythics if your team lacks stuns, and trust me, it will prove very useful when DPS boys forget to interrupt or CC stuff. Mass Entanglement will help you a lot, again in weeks such as Necrotic, because mass rooting a big chunk of mobs who are out to add necrotic stacks on you is just too good to pass. And the all-around good choice for all content, Heart of the Wild. This will buff your chosen affinity spells by 30% and most importantly for you, Moonfire. But this only if you are spec'd into Balance Affinity. Remember that. Popping this with Convoke the Spirits, the Nightfade Covenant ability, will lead up to some serious damage, but do take note that when you press Heart of the Wild and you have Balance Affinity on, it will take you out of bear form, so be ready to switch back as soon as possible, because you never want to be out of bear form. Instead, if you're all weaving. We'll get to that. Next up, you are looking at 2 main choices. For both dungeons and raids, Galactic Guardian will be the main choice as it will further increase your DPS due to your damaging abilities, proccing a Moonfire and enabling your next Moonfire after the proc to deal 300% more damage and generate 8 rage. More DPS equals more threat, and more rage equals more Iron Furs, so you cannot really go wrong with it. The absolute safe pick would be Incarn. An absolute beast of a cooldown, providing you the benefits of Berserk for 30 seconds rather than the 15, while also buffing your HP to 30% and enabling Mangle to hit up to 3 targets. If you don't know what Berserk does, it basically reduces the cost of your Iron Fur by 50% and the cost of Frenzy, Regeneration, Mangle, Thrash, and Growl by 75%. The very main button you press when shit hits the fan. Be mindful of its usage though, as it does come at a 3-minute cooldown. Fifth Throw has a couple of strings attached. Generally, you want to go with Earth Warden, as this will enable your Thrash direct damage to stack up with 30% damage reduction from auto attacks. And it can stack to a maximum of 3. Pretty good in most dungeons and highly recommended in raids. That being said, Survival of the Fittest is also a very strong contender, but this only if you crafted the specific legendary that adds another 10% damage reduction to your bark skin. We'll get to those shortly, don't worry. What this talent does is a sweet cooldown reduction for your bark skin by 33%. There is also a conduit that further lowers its cooldown, so you can look at a total of 34 seconds, like I have here, for bark skin, and with the actual duration of the spell being at 12 seconds, you can pretty much have it up on every major pull. Last bro, go Rend and Tear. That's it, see ya! Oh, you're still here? No, but on the real though, Rend and Tear is the all-rounder from this talent row, as it provides a damage reduction debuff to the target affected by Thrash while also buffing your damage. All these by 2% for each stack of Thrash you have, and it applies to dungeons too. I mean, imagine all the mobs having Thrash bleeds on them, it's just too good to pass. Of course, there's also Pulverize, which can be a strong defensive option in raids, as it will consume your Thrash stacks for some extra damage and extra damage reduction, but for the safe pick, stick to Rend and Tear. In terms of stats for your bear, you can never really sim for them, unless you want to be super offensive. I mean, sure, you want big damage on your bear. Go sim, but if DPS isn't your concern, don't think about simming, but rather follow these lines. You always want to prioritize agility above everything else, so always go for the higher item level piece of gear. Period. Agility basically affects your Iron Fur, which is your main mitigation ability, and the more agi you have, the more armor your Iron Fur will have. It also provides some dodge and attack power. Next up will be versatility. Nothing too complicated here. Versatility will boost your damage reduction and increase your damage done on top of heals and absorbs. It's rare where you will not see versatility as the top secondary stat for tanks. After that you have mastery, which will further help with your tankiness, as it will increase the healing you receive, your attack power, and your max HP. Haste comes really close because it has lots of benefits for you, ranging from faster ticks on Thrash and Moonfire to reducing your GCD and cooldowns for Frenzy Regen, Thrash, and Mangle. Lastly, Critical Strike, which can indeed provide dodge, but the diminishing returns on this are pretty big. You can opt to go for more crit than mastery if you plan to do more DPS, but keeping this in the safe zone, just follow item level, versatility, mastery/haste. Following the stat priority, you will adapt your enchants accordingly. So for your weapon, go with Ascended Vigor for a chance to proc a nice little increase of 12% for the healing you receive. That's the safe pick. If you want a bit more damage, then Lightless Force is your go-to, as this will provide a chance to deal some shadow damage to the first 5 enemies. Your boots should always have Eternal Agility for some nice extra 15 agi, and you want as much agi as you can get, okay? We talked about this. Your cloak should be either Fortified Leech for dungeons or Fortified Avoidance for big AoE damage fight, or as an all-rounder, Soul Vitality for some extra chunk of stamina. The chest will net you extra stats as the safe pick for Eternal stats, or alternatively, Eternal Skirmish for the more offensive approach, this having a chance to proc some extra agility. We love agility, okay? The armor kit should ideally be a heavily desolate armor kit, but if you're a poor Yogi Bear like me and don't have the gold, a simple desolate armor kit can also work, just the stamina will be lower. Following the secondary stats priority, your gems should all be Versatile Jewel Cluster, while the rings should be enchanted with the bargain of versatility as all these will increase your overall defensiveness, damage output, and healing receipt. In terms of flasks, go with Spectral Flask of Power for extra agility, and your potion should follow the same route with Potion of Spectral Agility. Use Embalmer's Oil for a high chance to proc some self-healing, and if you're at full HP, it will grant an Absorb Shield. Or if you prefer a more DPS-y approach, the good old Shadow Core Oil can do the trick, no problemo. And now time for the picnic basket. Oh, you know Yogi loves some steak calamari. Because versatility, and I hope we already established how good versatility is for your tummy. Yes, Covenants! So here, the main consensus is going Night Fae with Nia as your early expansion Soulbind of choice. You will see a lot of folks recommending Dreamweaver, but honestly, the mastery bonus from Nia's Grove Invigoration is just too good to pass up. And if you remember, mastery increases your max HP, the healing you receive, and your attack power. So yeah, Nia all the way. The Shining Star spell of this Covenant is Convoke the Spirits, an ability that will cast 16 Druid spells in 4 seconds, prioritizing the spells of your main form. It delivers big damage, but it will also almost always grant you at least 2 stacks of Iron Fur and lots of heals, so it can also be used defensively. It's also a good idea to cast this while in melee range and after you have your Moonfires and Thrashes up, because then you will have a higher chance of it casting more useful spells. For your potency conduits, your best pair is Unchecked Aggression and Conflicts of Elements. Unchecked Aggression will give you 15% haste during your Berserk, while Conflicts of Elements is a flat damage and healing increase for your Convoked Spirits. We strongly recommend going for the 2 Endurance slots, but if you go with the potency route, use Unchecked Aggression for Mythic Plus and Conflicts of Elements for raids, because you can always do a DPS or healing convoke. The actual defensive slots should be Tough as Bark, that conduit that I talked about in the talent section, which will reduce the cooldown of your bark skin. Second one should be Layered Mane, as this will provide a chance for your Iron Fur to stack twice. Alright, when it comes to trinkets, always remember to use the highest item level you have available regardless of the effects they provide. That being said, some very good defensive trinkets would be the Blood Spattered Scale, which on use it will deal shadow damage split between your targets, and it will also form a big ass shield scaled with your versatility. This one drops from the other side. Second one drops from Sardenatrius and it's called Sanguine Vintage. It is even stronger in terms of defensives because on use it will gain you an Absorb Shield for 6 seconds and then it will heal you for 200% of the amount remaining of said shield after you take damage. Another good trinket is Overcharged Anima Battery, which on use it will give you a good chunk of haste and some speed. Haste, as was mentioned in the stats section, has many benefits, so this is why this trinket made it to the list. Also, Shadowgrass Totem from the other side is a really good choice because it deals good damage to your target, and once the target dies, it will heal you and the cooldown of the trinket is reduced by 15 seconds. Legendaries. Ah yes. So, do you remember I mentioned a specific legendary when talking about the 6th talent row? You know, Survival of the Fittest talent that reduce your bar skin by 33%? Well, my friend, that legendary is Natural Order's Will, or simply Now. And what it does is, first off, 10% extra damage reduction for your bar skin, so a total of 30% damage reduction. Second, when you pop it, you gain Iron Fur and Frenzy Regeneration. Third, you gain these two again once bark skin ends. It's just too good and the best all-around legendary you can have for your bear. There's also Ursock's Fury Remembered, almost on equal value but more useful in Mythic Plus, as this will make your Thrash have a 15% chance to trigger another stack of it, and it also provides an Absorb Shield of 75% of all the damage Thrash deals. I played with them both, and honestly, you cannot go wrong with either of them regardless if you're doing raids or dungeons, but if I were to pick a super safe one, Natural Order's Will would be the one, but only by a very slight margin. A note to be added here for the Quantum Device trinket that drops from the other side. This will be the absolute go-to trinket if you decide to play in-card and run the Ursox Fury Remember legendary. Just wanted to add this here. Alright, now tanks don't usually have a set-in-stone rotation, but rather ways to react and adapt depending on the damage intake. Now you heard me talk a lot about Iron Fur, and as stated previously, this is your main damage mitigation ability. It provides a big chunk of armor lasting 6 seconds and costing 40 rage. The secret of being an immortal bear is managing your Iron Fur stacks. How do you do this? Well, by generating rage, of course. Thrash and Mangle are your rage generators, with the proc of Moonfire from the Galactic Guardian talent being the last. The main idea is to pull sufficient rage so you have to spend it on Iron Furs when shit hits the fan. Now of course this cannot always be ideal, especially if you're just starting out, so do take note of your other defensive cooldowns. Survival Instincts has 2 charges and it will net you 50% damage reduction for 6 seconds. The recharge is on a 2-minute cooldown. Frenzied Regeneration also has 2 charges and it's ideal to use it when you're low and you know you're about to take even more damage. It will heal you to 32% of your max HP. Barskin will reduce the damage you take by 20% by default or by 30% when you pair it up with the Now legendary. If you also go with the Survival Instincts talent and Tough as Bar Conduit, using Barskin and maintaining Iron Furs should be enough for any oh shit moment, making the use of your other defensive cooldowns to not occur almost at all. Berserk is again to be used in tight situations because it will allow you to stack quickly many Iron Furs on top of letting you spam Mangles and Thrashes like crazy. Now that you know all the defensives, it will really boil down to your judgment when to use what depending on how hard an ability hits or what phase of the raid you're in, so it's a good thing to start familiarizing yourself with dungeon routes, boss abilities, and so on. In terms of a very general rotation, Moonfire has to always be on cooldown. Use Thrash on cooldown, then use Mangle on cooldown, pop Convoke the Spirits, and always swipe to fill the empty GCD. You can also make the use of Owl Weaving on big keys when pulling. Easiest and most effective is to start the pull with a Thrash or 2, then Typhoon the mobs, hit your Heart of the Wild, or go into Boomkin form if you have Heart of the Wild on cooldown, and then pop Convoke the Spirits. All recommended by the senpai himself, Pumps. As mentioned in the beginning of the video, there is much more to Guardian Druids in Shadowlands. Multiple talent builds, conduit builds, consumables, all depending on being offensive for AoE, for raids, not to mention more on cat weaving, owl weaving, and all this info plus more can be found in the Dream Grove Discord community, where literal guardian gods like Pumps are waiting for your noob ass to get schooled. No, seriously, Pumps has always been willing to help us out by fact-checking and making sure the info is accurate, so thank you, Pumps, for making better bears out of all of us. You can check Pumps on twitch.tv/pumpsm8 and also on his Wowhead Bear Guide. All links are in the description. A big salute to our Patreon gang who keep on supporting this type of content month by month, and truth be told, without your support, these videos wouldn't be posted as often and not with the same quality, so thank you, dear Patreon. You know who you are. And hey, if you want to join the team that way, check the link in the description and see if you find anything you like. Thank you for watching up to this point. Like the video if you found it useful, and now go tank with your bear.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.